Hey. Good morning, welcome everybody to this fourth session, which is session.
This is session 6.
Sixth session.
Day 3, session 6.
Again, every one of the sessions has just been terrific. Dinner was pretty good last night.
It was pretty.
The awards, wow, it was pretty good.
You must have had the feel.
I had the feel.
See?
Everybody had the sound, right? That was the winner. But it really shows the importance of this organization when people, as such, that were getting recognized last night, were there. Really, the organization is doing great work. Without further ado, I'm Mark Hocklerin. I'm the Global Director of Client Services for Shen, Milsom Wilke. We are a global consulting firm with offices all over the world. It's my pleasure to introduce a colleague, a former client. I don't know how many of you folks ever worked with Mark Peterson when he was at Morgan Stanley. Okay, the hands go up. Reading this directly from Mark's resume, Mark was Morgan Stanley's Vice President in the End User Services Unified Communications and Collaboration Group. Mark was the principal architect behind Morgan Stanley's collaboration spaces, desktop conference room interoperability, and external cloud calling strategy. He was the global head of Morgan Stanley's multimedia. Shen, Milsom Wilke was very fortunate to be able to build a relationship with Mark, and Mark joined Shen, I guess, about 4 or 5 years ago. He's a visionary, and every day going to work with Mark, who was a former client and now is a colleague, is very engaging. It's inspiring to work with him, and he's also a great harmonica player. Great, right? A great musician. Anyway, my privilege to introduce Mark Peterson to everybody. Give a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Mark. Everyone in this room is in some way engaged in the design process of our workspaces. But at the same time, at any given time, everyone is getting it wrong. Let me give you an example. Consider the NBA three-pointer. 3 points have always been worth more than 2. Oh yeah, sorry, but it was a slide first. Oh, we've got giveaways to come up? 2 giveaways?
Everybody's got tickets. Anybody who doesn't go see it.
That's right. Okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you.
You got one more housekeeping slide in there.
One more housekeeping slide. I'm going to go to that in just a minute.
Okay, fine. Okay.
So, 3 points have always been worth more than 2. Millions of people have watched the game for years, but it wasn't until somebody like Steph Curry came along, fundamentally changed the game. And this just didn't happen in our lifetimes. This happened within the last 5 years. It's not like they figured out the physics of shooting three-pointers any differently. Players are simply shooting more, and they're making more. It's like wheels on luggage. The future solutions may be right in plain sight. Anyone heard of the Nike Vaporfly that just came on the market? This sneaker is making a profound impact on professional sports. Sneaker designs have been around for years, and now this one is apparently giving athletes an unfair advantage. They're literally springing forward. Suddenly, world records are being smashed because of sneakers. Zoom product has come on the market, surging ahead of the competition. What are the design principles that they're using? What options and considerations should we put forward when we look at the future of our spaces? At Shen, Milsom Wilke, we're a pure design firm with multiple disciplines, and I lead the global AV practice. And we design workspaces essentially, it's lifestyle design. We're part of a team, and when we're brought in early, we can help amplify creativity, increase collaboration, and revolutionize how people work. Our designs are essentially interdependent systems of rituals and workflows. Space and collaboration tools are designed to support cultural, social, and business objectives. So we have to understand the challenges and aspirations of our clients, identify the points of friction, design the pressure points out, and use physical models to verify. So we answer the question, how do we put all these gadgets together? The construction of these spaces combines physical components, collaboration platforms, and digital interfaces. So we have to avoid the tendency to design spaces based upon the old ways we work. If our job is creative, like an architect, we're going to want to reinforce flexibility, like movable furniture. If our job is about productivity and efficiency, we're going to want to cramp more people into space. Productivity, innovation, well-being, these are the key catalyst points we're going to be considering today. Because our job is to respond to the customer's expectations. They demand intelligently designed systems and spaces that are focused on their end users' experiences. And our job today, like your job, is to challenge assumptions and ask questions. So, what is IMCCA? Well, by now, fourth day, Interactive Multimedia Collaboration Communications Alliance. It's a nonprofit. It's neutral. It is bringing branding and training and awareness across the world. And for further information, contact the IMCCA at www.imcca.org. Users react positively when things are clear and understandable. A good design is as little design as possible. When you get it right, like with the Apple iPhone, it feels inevitable. It feels almost under-designed. Of course that's the way it should be. Why would it be any other way? When IDEO designed the first laptop in the 1980s, the focus was on the physical design, elements in which way the lid for the building. But they soon realized the whole experience is between the user and what's behind the screen, not the physical device itself. And this was the beginning of interactive design. The MacBook Air, it starts out as a block of extruded aluminum. Designers spent more time on the jigs and figuring out ways to cut the aluminum through. It was more about the process and achieving that than the final product. That's where the challenges are. So, how many of you today are working remotely? Quite a handful of people here. How many of you still routinely go to the office? Quite a few. How many of you believe that your workplace fosters productivity? Are you productive? How about, do you have software that allows you to be creative and innovative? A couple things here, right? Do you have software and tools that foster employee engagement and well-being? Not so many, right? Our workplace is changing. My team is across the globe. Yes, I work in the building, but I can be anywhere and I'm engaged across the globe at different time zones. So there's this work-life balance. I want to be able to give my staff and myself opportunities to reflect and step out of the workplace. So work is no longer what you do. It's about what you do and not where you do it, right? But you still got to go, technically you've got to go to the office. In fact, sometimes those sessions are going to be even more important. And we're going to be talking about that. We're going to talk about zones of collaboration, the hierarchy of needs, unlocking the collaboration code. Why did they make those open spaces in the first place? Distance really actually does matter. Radical co-location and deep work are two opposite extremes that we're going to talk about. The third wave of collaboration, and we're going to look at the predictions for the fourth wave, and we'll talk about the impact of global companies and the future of the workspace. Okay, so here we are, 2020. And they've been the last 10 years predicting how many of us are going to be working remotely. Now, What can we learn from all these predictions? I mean, at one point in 2017, Yahoo pulled back all the way from allowing people to work remotely. And then last year we saw, okay, it isn't going to be 66% of the people being remote, but they're going to allow them to be remote. Right? But I saw a lot of hands here. The one thing I can say is it's extremely difficult to predict how many people in the future are going to be working remotely, although we know it's going to be quite a few, just as equally difficult to predict the future of our workspace. But let's start to decipher this a little bit. The concept around zones of collaboration comes from this review of the way different cultures work through spaces. And these different areas can expand and contract based upon the culture. If I'm in a country with a real emphasis on my leadership, I may expand those offices and make them more elaborate. I may expand and make a little more elaborate my arrival space. If not, I may contract that and put more of my leadership right in the residential neighborhood, giving everybody the best technology I can. I've got to have a place to touch down from my nomadic boards, from my sales force and other people that are coming into the offices. They need to collaborate. They also need time, downtime, and time to reflect. And many times you'll see this in the workspace design, these areas of collaboration which are intersecting, purposely designed so that the people in executive leadership are intersecting with these other people in the workplace. What's common about all these places? They're all using technology. These spaces are being planned out based upon the physical interactions. But in reality, we're not talking about collaborate and capture, mentor and tell, cross-pollinate, collide and display, gather and share, focus and reflect. These are common workspace terms, all built on the physical presence. And yet I saw so many hands up of people who are not going to be in the office. So we need to shift this paradigm and think about how do we take those same concepts and the same areas of concepts around collaboration and apply it to that remote workforce. Because for me, and I mentioned this the other day to Google, for those who didn't go, let's go. If I have more than 3 people in a meeting, I'm likely to include an invite for people to dial in remotely, because at any given time, that 4th, 5th, or 6th person probably can't make that meeting. They're on the phone, they've got another conflict, they've got to be somewhere else, but I can give them a link and they can join the meeting. If I don't do that, if I forget that, then I'm going to have to stop my meeting and find a link and send it to everybody. So it just makes sense to start with the assumption that not everybody's going to be in that workplace. Does that make sense? Are there any zones that are not shown here that you think we should be considering? The remote work. Well, this is also about coming when you come into a place. One of them that's not here is well-being, right? If you go to some spaces, they're going to have areas where you can meditate, you can exercise, right? The wellness factor is now starting to be placed into this area as well. So, you've probably seen this in the news just even today. There's news about like the Lord & Taylor building that's being bought eventually by Amazon. The WeWork tsunami is an interesting concept that we need to look at because of the value of the co-working space. And as the dust settles, landlords and tenants and space providers are feeling the impact. Customers are left looking for new homes, and they're big enterprises, the global landlords. And there's a consolidation of those spaces into the remaining service providers. But you know what? Investors are remaining positive about the future of the co-working industry. They're seeing the value of profitability over growth for growth's sake, which we believe is what's going on with the WeWork model. So at the same time that there is investment in this flex space industry, co-living is growing rapidly. Are you people seeing that? I was looking for an apartment last weekend. I was thinking about moving out to the Brooklyn area, and I saw these cheap apartments. What was going on was I would get a studio apartment, and I just had the room, and the living room and the bathroom is shared space, right? Oh, and I got all those amenities that I no longer had to worry about, and they're going to provide olive oil, they're going to provide all this stuff, so I can take my own time. I don't have to store, I don't buy paper towels and stuff like that. This is similar, very similar to the co-working space, so there's a much greater chance of an understanding expectation and a balance between those two. Co-working 3.0 is what we're seeing. We're seeing this with our clients. Landlords and tenants and space providers are coming up with a win-win. They're no longer seeing these forced standards from these service providers. but they're seeing a partnership. Convene, they raised $150 million with their partnership with Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Barclays. Their value proposition is making meeting spaces, places that you can go to have your retreats. And they have yoga and wellness spaces. Industrious, they're one of the largest competitors to WeWork. They raised $80 million from investors in 2019. They're supposed to turn a profit this year. They have partnerships with Brookfield Place and Equinox. They're providing a premium experience. The profit margins are starting to come around. And we're going to see this and continue to increase because, as CBRE says, 3/4 of their largest customers are looking to add these flex spaces to their real estate portfolio. And the flex space designs are coming in to the workplace directly. On the left, Ed Moser's headquarters in Woolworth. This green wall is a flexible wall on casters that can move and expand, be pushed out of the way so they can take a smaller spaces and make them bigger. The one on the right, Perkins & Will for Nixon Peabody Law Firm. This is a flat panel display on a rotating base. So when it's not facing the reception, it can turn around facing the cafe, and now I can have my town halls in those spaces. So obviously architects are looking to make more flexibility of the spaces, but sometimes you can get to an extreme. And we're seeing that. I mean, this is an IKEA situation. And what Moser is saying, and they're workplace designers that we work with quite a bit, certain features like sliding partitions and demountable walls tend not to be used. People think it's too much labor. The flex features seem permanent. And a recent post-occupancy survey by Moser found that the ultra-flexible workspace is sometimes distracting. And to counter the interruptions, we've got these pods and booths. We heard this at Google being very popular. Focus furniture. And these felt-covered pods are blocking out the sound and light from others. So what's the impact on the community? I created this open space, and the next thing I'm doing is I'm walling people off. And the community is in different areas. I've got a relationship with the people that provide food in the building. I'm going to nurture the sunlight and open up the area to my neighbors. I also have a neighboring community right in my workplace. And I'm going to use the cafe areas to expand the knowledge and share richness for everybody. And of course, I've got the online community. And all of these areas have to reflect the vibrance of the organization and the well-being and overall work styles. So, we're seeing something else happen with architects. They're designing spaces around the layout of the home. Why? Does anyone have any idea why they're doing that? Work-life balance. That's one reason. Maybe it's a sense of familiarity. But maybe there's something about the activities that happen in these spaces, from purposeful interaction to private reflection. Because spaces can be used for productivity or innovation. And maybe that table is a barrier. But also, maybe without a table, it's a little bit more difficult to use a laptop and share data. Open space planning with areas of audience participation that's movable and around. These are examples, shameless plug for Group M. It won the 2018 Product of the Year for IFMA and the 2019 Product of the Year for Cornet. And the reason was these kinds of spaces provide a lot of flexibility. I can move the technology around, I'm not having to plug in. But am I going to be as productive in that space? If I've got to sit on the couch to be able to use my laptop? Maybe not. So what purpose, what am I trying to achieve in this space? What am I showing on 8 different displays? These thoughts need to go in early on in our design process. Because the different kinds of consumption of data, we're going to hear a little bit later on from the Gen Xers about this, but I've got 2. I've got a 22-year-old and a 28-year-old. My 28-year-old is in Fine Art, and they're all in this one building, right? They're all in this building. And I go there, and he's watching a game, a video game, you know, where a first-person shooter game. But he's not playing the game. He's watching somebody else play the game. He's leaving that running, and you see the face of the player playing and shooting the game. And he's gaining value from that experience, even though he's passively watching the game. Has anyone seen that? Anyone know what I'm talking about? It comes from NASCAR, right? And I'm thinking, what if that was Elon Musk? Maybe I could follow along with experts and see that happening. Maybe the concept of what we're thinking about consumption of data that's going to be displayed on those screens is completely different from the way and the types of data that we're using today, particularly if you're a media firm or a marketing firm. Zones of collaboration applied to our enterprise clients. This is an example of a early on testing. And if we get here early enough, we can start to look at why these spaces are laid out. Up in the corners of the room, up in the top and bottom that they call the living room, is almost like a tinker toy of collaboration. Multiple spaces that they want to be able to take down and rearrange over a weekend and put it back together again. Look at the same the same terminology we talked about the personal life, about having pantries and study at home areas. In any one of these areas when we talk about technology, it has to be consistent. I've got the same requirements. How do I book a space? How do I plug in? And how do I do a call? And this brings us to the hierarchy of needs. All right, so I want to use a conference room or whatever kind of room. Before I know you can use the room, I've got to find it. Okay? So fundamental in our design process should be the location of these spaces. Easily know what's available, not available. If someone leaves the room, free up the room, maximize utilization. Now I'm in the room, I got working technology, that's great. Well, let me tell you something. The most important thing is training. No matter how good the technology is, you've got to train your users. And Erin knows all about that. She's a great source for reinforcing that message about the importance of training. So I'm in there, and I want to be able to share content. I can share this content, that's great. Now what I'm going to do is if I can make a space that I can share content, it's working all the time, and I can find it, I want to repeat this across the globe. So I need to be able to have a uniformity standard, okay? Standards are not the brackets of finished work. Standards are the formula to manage change. Without standards, it is disarray and no one has a sense of what's going on. The standards give you the swim lanes to develop and shift and adapt to wide-ranging changes. When we look at spaces now, there's a conflict between the physical space, which has a long sense of permanence, and the dynamicness of how the technology is constantly changing. And this is the real challenge, and this is where the standards help keep in alignment. So, of course, now I want to measure utilization and prove I've got things right, okay? And I've got spaces and I can validate my designs and change them and shift them over time using metrics. What's at the top? What would you put at the top? Anybody? Okay, so for me, what I first thought about was equality, because I was out in Singapore talking to people from Google, and I asked them, if you fix all this and you got thousands of rooms, what's your challenge? What do you face? And they said, I want to make sure that the experience for somebody, regardless of the culture, is equal. And you think about it, with Alexa, they don't have voice recognition, they may hopefully this year, that is equal across different languages. When we look at cameras and skin tones, are we giving everybody an equal experience? I said, yeah, maybe it's equality, maybe that's what we're looking for. But I've changed my mind a little bit on that. And I believe we heard that yesterday and the day before, and we're going to hear more of it, and that's artificial intelligence. And that's the use of data to predict where you're going to be next and make you more efficient, more productive. I believe that's more likely to occur. Hopefully there will be more equality as we go. Does that make sense? So when we start to look at collaboration, this term I thought was quite useful because it started around 8 years ago, and it goes to why do we open up those spaces and make these open space plans? Because we start with these challenges to decipher them and maybe we can figure out our next generation designs. The concept was around increasing engagement and exploration, and if you combine those two, you're going to increase energy. Okay, got it. But let's put this in practical terms. If I'm here in the left-hand corner, and I'm at a private office, and I want to increase productivity, what do I got to do? Well, according to design planners, what I want to be able to do is give you a conference room so you can meet with other people from private offices, and give you a coffee machine so you can get out of your office, go to the conference room, have a cup of coffee, go back to your desk, and be more productive. What's happening in that experience is I'm meeting and engaging with my peers in a consistent manner. And therefore, I'm going to increase productivity because I minimize the number of variables. Opposite of that. I'm going to take your office away. You no longer have a assigned desk. I'm going to give you free form in a wide open space. What I'm going to give you is more collaboration spaces. And I'm going to give you a big giant cafe. What am I doing? I'm increasing collisions. I am increasing opportunities for diversity of thought. This is where innovation happens. A majority of our emphasis on our spaces today are here. Increase productivity. Get more out of the operator. Get more out of them. How many of you are sharpening the saw on a daily basis? Do you know what I mean by sharpening the saw? Okay, when you mow your lawn and the blade goes dull, it's going to take you twice as long to mow the lawn. If you stop and sharpen the saw, that's not going to happen. Improving processes, innovation, creativity is very important, because if we continue to increase productivity, we could produce a widget that no one needs anymore, and a lot of them. So we have to continue to stay engaged and reinforce the value of innovation in our workplaces. It may not be happening at a 50-50 rate, it may be a 10 or a 20 rate, but it's extremely important. And this also happens in the digital space. If I use collaboration tools that are limiting me to people that I work with, say for example, Skype for Business or Teams, and I'm working with people in Teams, I'm going to have a lot of creative productivity. But if I use a product that is more open, if I use a Zoom or an open platform, greater chance the other people on the call are people I'm not familiar with, I haven't had collaboration experiences before, I'm going to get diversity of thought. Okay? More data points. At the same time, we have to remember the Allen curve. And the concept still applies. And the point here is that even with distance shrinking technology, as that accelerates, proximity still becomes important. I am more likely to socialize with my peer down the hall than I am with people across the country, even though the tool allows me to do that. Okay? We can't assume that just because we're opening up to the globe that we're going to pick up the phone more often and speak to people as neighbors when they're in London or the Far East. Okay? And particularly since there's time differences. I'm not eating meals at the same time. I'm not taking breaks at the same time. So we need to remember this understanding of the proximity effect. Radical co-location came about with hackathons, when they come together and try to figure out program code. What am I talking about? Well, I believe the same concept of breaking problems into parts, continuous small meetings, and shared work is happening with our nomadic workforce today. When you are all these people here that have raised their hands about being remote, when you come to the office, it is that much more important. Your meetings are now absolutely critical. So what are you doing? You're planning them for, and you need methods to take that information after your session away, capture, and respond. If I walk out of that session, I've flown in and have a meeting in my office space, and I walk back to my office on the other side of the country, what have I got to work with? What conclusions have we come to? Where is that agreement? Where are those minutes? How can I get to that information? So the concept around radical co-location is important for our development of our next spaces. And at the opposite end of that is deep work collaboration. Deep work. When I'm making a presentation like this, I can't be in the office from 9 to 5. I can't sharpen the saw when I'm getting constantly interrupted. And that's what's happening. Shallow work is where everything's at right now. I've got open space plans. I've got interruptions. Anybody can find me. All of our technology is about finding me right now, wherever I am on that. I can't go anywhere. I was texting a friend who's skiing in Jackson Hole on the top of a mountain, right? And so the ability to access people is fantastic, but that's a direct conflict with deep work. So what do I do when I want to retreat? First of all, I'm going to work asynchronously. And products like Teams and Slack are very effective at being able to say, okay, I'm going to post work, but I'm not going to interact with you. We can share. I'll come back to that experience. It also helps if I've got a distance between myself and other workers, like in a different region or time zone. And then the question comes back, all right, I have this epiphany. I'm going to have an epiphany, a shower, maybe walking a dog. It's not going to be in my normal conflict of time here. And now I've got to share out that experience to other people. I'm going to take you on a journey, right? So I'm going to take you on a journey. Am I going to do it in a regular conferencing room? It's going to be a little bit more difficult if I don't have a way to visualize my dream, my patterns, my thoughts. They aren't organized in a way that's so obvious that you can say, okay, start the meeting, go ahead, start your journey, tell us how you got to this conclusion, this wonderful world of where we're going to be going. Now, let's talk a little bit about how we predict and anticipate for the future. And by doing this, we're going to peek a little bit back into the past. And I'm going to use this concept of coffee as a scaffolding to kind of explain where I believe we're headed. When we first started having coffee, and I'm talking about this because we have something called the third wave of coffee, right? So let's start with the first wave. When Folgers and Maxwell House came out, the goal there in technology, in production products, is to make a consistent product. I got to get it out of Colombia, ship it across the world, and make it taste the same wherever I'm at, right? Okay, good. The same thing happens with a company like Tamber with the 1700. They commoditized it, all in one product. I didn't have so much risk because my camera and everything's all in one unit. Then what happens? Well, once I can deliver a consistent product, I can wrap an ecosystem around it. I can put more products and more opportunities around this single individual product. And we see that with Cisco. We see this with other manufacturers. You're not just buying a conferencing unit, you're buying a phone, you're buying other products that bring in a whole ecosystem. But what's changed now, and then the third wave, is the experience. It affects us all over this, right? This concept around not about the coffee anymore. If I go to a coffee shop, the coffee is secondary to my being in the coffee shop, right? And the same thing is happening with Office 365. I'm looking at an experience, and now I'm starting to personalize my cup of coffee. I can choose what I want, where the single origin beans were, and I can also personalize my collaboration tool. So, what's the fourth wave? Any ideas? Where are we going? If I give you a hint, in the coffee world, the coffee experts are saying the fourth generation of coffee is about getting more information about how the soil content works. How did we produce product plants and make the flavor changes occur based upon the environment? A lot like wine, right? Makes sense. How would that apply here? Data. Data-driven behavior, right? We already know these things. It's like the three-pointer. I've got to get more information to the end user so they can make effective decisions. I mean, thanks to Facebook and Russia, you go to a web page and it says, cookies, click here, okay. So they're gathering information on it. You know, all over the place they're gathering. I say, well, let's reverse that. Why don't I get my information about how much you are gathering from me? That's really what that whole rights should have been. It's not about okay to accept, but okay, give me so, you know, I can know how much time I'm on Instagram, I can know how much time I'm collaborating and consuming, so I can make better decisions. This is happening across the globe. We need to see these companies treat buildings as communication tools. We need to look at ways we can optimize the virtual space, and we need to build communities that foster the sense of interaction between the technical spaces and the physical spaces. And we need to look at these AI programmable habitats. And for this one, I researched Jennifer Malfi, the founder of Programmable Habitats. Her job is to study NASA scientists in the highest performing teams around the world. Because if we look at where we want to be as an organization, we want to foster that level of intelligence and futuristic thinking. And what they're saying is that there's going to be this convergence of human work and machine interaction. It makes more sense, right? I've got data. I've got masses of data. They're not going to fit on a screen anymore. I need multiple ways of being able to move this data around. I've got to be able to do this because my talent is going to be demanding this. Because what's happening there is artificial intelligence, according to Bosch, by 2025, it's going to be a $120 billion industry. And this is a whole new, different set of jobs and required skills. Do these skills happen with remote workers? Well, there's a massive amount of computing power, so somewhere to make these calculations with artificial intelligence, we're going to have a lot of computing power. So there's likely going to be a demand and a need for this to be in offices and associated type to the cloud, either way. And that's why the tsunami of 5G and Wi-Fi and data and AI is just definitely going to push this right into our phones, our mobile devices, wherever we are. Now, Dave and I had the opportunity to listen to IP Park. He's the president and CTO of LG at CES 2020. And for the first time, I started to get a sense of what we're talking about with AI. What does it mean? Where are we going? And I thought this was very helpful. Whether this is accurate or not, the concept with level 1 is that it's where specific devices and system functions are automated through simple commands, efficiency. We're there right now, control systems. We're able to make that level 1 leap, no problem. Level 2, this is pattern learning, building memory to improve interactions. I've got a vacuum cleaner that learns from getting stuck. I have patterns of spatial recognition, technology that distinguishes you, your voice and behavior. We're almost there, right? We've got Alexa, and we're moving there with cameras and being able to do that. The third level, where are we heading? This is about causality learning, the why behind the action, reasoning intelligence. To get to reasoning intelligence, we need more points of data to give more insights. And this is just beginning. And what's on the horizon for level 4, which is out there, right, is the ability to form hypotheses, to draw data from new sources beyond the original data set, to make correlations. Making correlations. When we were in the session with Google, I said, if you know there are 4 people in the room and they're all on Hangouts, and you have Hangouts, and you are using all of the software that you have, why can't you tell us, the common frequency that these people are all working on? I mean, my documents are all over the place. My document can be in any server, the cloud, it could be in anybody's folder anywhere. How do I find the stuff that we worked on? If I'm watching TV and I pause the Amazon, I see all of the players, I see the cast, I see what their last movies were. We need that kind of experience to drive it. And I'm bringing also this picture in of the car, because obviously as we get to be no longer driving, what are we doing in the cars? Remote workers? So distributed networks are going to influence how workers are organized, not the other way around. How we collaborate online should become the way spaces are designed, not the other way around. We're going to have teams that are much more skilled on machine assistance, and they're going to need to move around and manipulate the data. I'm going to skip through this demonstration of a product that exemplifies that kind of experience. And in conclusion, more interactions increase more positive outcomes. We should be designing those places on productivity, innovation, deep work, and wellness. Distance actually does matter, so make the most of when you radically co-locate. Design the next wave of data-driven collaboration spaces. And take advantage of co-working spaces, because that's where they've optimized the quick change of technology with the advancements in the spaces that are designed to help you with spaces you can't afford to build yourself. And we need to design these workspaces based upon how we collaborate online. Thank you.